Off the coast of England, the North Sea rolls under a slate sky. HMS Boadicea cuts through 4-foot swells, her diesel engines thrumming at 12 knots. On this convoy run, 17 merchantmen trail behind in staggered columns. The radio crackles, Admiralty signals, terse and coded. Lieutenant Colonel Roger Binns grips the bridge rail, scanning grey water through bar and Stroud binoculars. At 14:20 hours, sonar reports a contact. The high whistle comes next. A torpedo, G7E electric model, running shallow. The crew braces, but the weapon tracks wide, detonating harmlessly 30 meters to starboard. In U-96's periscope, Captain Lieutenant Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock curses softly. The silhouette had wavered, dissolved. His rangefinder data made no sense. On Boadicea's hull, black and white stripes alternate in geometric chaos. The mad paint scheme, approved 3 weeks prior, has just recorded its first documented miss. The file would note, targeting disruption observed. The revolution begins quietly. By late September 1940, Portsmouth Dockyard operates under blackout and fog. Steam hisses from turbine housings. Hammers echo across dry docks, where destroyers receive armour plating. Petty Officer Thomas Webb steps from a Bedford OYD truck, collar up against drizzle. Around him, dockhands manoeuvre cargo nets loaded with depth charges and cordite canisters. The air tastes of coal smoke and salt. Webb has been transferred from HMS Acheron after her refit, his service jacket noting 12 years as a marine engineer and 3 commendations for fire control maintenance. But his mind isn't on machinery. It's on the numbers that circulate through mess halls every night. In August alone, U-boats sank 56 Allied merchant vessels, 267,618 gross register tons. The Battle of the Atlantic is becoming a calculus of attrition, and Britain is losing. Webb watches a destroyer, HMS Janus, her grey paint pristine and regulation, perfect, visible, predictable. Why make it easy for them? He mutters to no one. The idea forming in his mind feels absurd, yet it nags with mechanical logic. Optical rangefinders depend on clear silhouettes, continuous lines, measurable angles, predictable forms. What if the form itself became unreliable? What if the ship's outline couldn't be trusted? Webb has seen zebras in a zoology text his daughter brought home from school. The stripes confuse predators, break the body's edges. Could paint do to a periscope what nature does to a lion's eye? It's the kind of thought that shouldn't survive scrutiny. But in his gut, hardened by 12 years at sea, it resonates like a tuned engine. Over the next 2 weeks, Webb sketches in a notebook salvaged from stores. He diagrams hull sections, draws alternating bands in black ink. The patterns disrupt vertical lines, fragment horizontal planes. He calculates German U-boat periscope optics use 6x magnification with split-image rangefinders. Accurate torpedo firing requires stable target, bearing, measured speed, and clear silhouette edges. If even one variable becomes uncertain, the firing solution degrades. Webb's design doesn't hide the ship. It makes measuring the ship unreliable. On October 8th, he requests an appointment with his commanding officer through proper channels. The request form lists subject as quote, experimental camouflage proposal, anti-submarine application. 3 days later, he's granted 15 minutes. Lieutenant Colonel Roger Binns receives Webb in his quarters aboard HMS Boadicea on the evening of December 2nd, 1940. The cabin is compact, desk bolted to the deck, charts rolled in brass tubes, a single oil lamp burning against the blackout. Binns is 41, a career officer who commanded destroyers in the Mediterranean before this North Atlantic posting. He's seen convoy losses firsthand. When Webb spreads his sketches across the desk, Binns studies them without immediate comment. The silence stretches. Outside, the dockyard clangs with night work. Webb explains the concept in measured terms: optical disruption, rangefinder confusion, degraded firing solutions. He avoids melodrama. He presents it as engineering, not inspiration. "You want to paint the entire ship in zebra stripes," Binns says finally. His tone is neutral. "Yes, sir," Webb replies. "It won't make us invisible, but it could make us harder to measure. U-boat commanders calculate range, bearing, speed. They need clean reference points. This removes them. No clear waterline, no predictable shadow, just visual noise." He taps the diagram. "Their optics are precision instruments. Precision needs certainty. We give them uncertainty." Binns leans back. "The proposal is unorthodox, even absurd by Admiralty standards. Yet the convoy statistics are undeniable. In November, U-boats sank 32 ships. Standard grey camouflage offers no defence against skilled submariners. The Admiralty has experimented with false bow waves, dummy funnels, even painted clouds on hulls. None proved effective. This idea, disruptive patterning based on natural camouflage, at least has a logical foundation." Binns considers the risk. Paint costs little. Application takes days. If it fails, they repaint. If it works, even marginally, it saves tonnage. He glances at Webb's service record on his desk. Reliable, thorough, no history of fantasy. "I'll forward this to Admiralty with endorsement," Binns says. "Experimental application pending approval. You'll oversee the work if authorized." Webb nods once, betraying no relief. 2 weeks later, a terse signal arrives from London. "Camouflage trial approved. HMS Boadicea. Report results. The experiment is official. The file reference is ADM 111-234. The paint order specifies 50 gallons each, dull lamp black and titanium white." On December 15, 1940, painters from Portsmouth Dockyard begin applying Webb's design to HMS Boadicea's hull. The ship sits in dry dock, her waterline exposed, rust patches scraped clean. The pattern isn't random. Webb has calculated angles based on typical periscope observation positions, offset stripes that disrupt horizontal sight lines, vertical bands that fragment the hull's length. The paint goes on in layers, primer first, then alternating blacks and whites in irregular widths. Some stripes are 18 inches, others nearly 4 feet. They angle slightly, refusing perfect geometry. Crew members gather to watch, their reactions ranging from skepticism to outright mockery. "Looks like a bloody circus ship," one rating mutters. Another says it'll make them a bigger target, visible for miles. Webb ignores the commentary. He walks the scaffolding with a measuring tape, ensuring each stripe aligns with his drawings. The work takes 4 days. By December 19th, Boadicea resembles no ship in the Royal Navy. The stripes are bold, almost garish, yet strangely difficult to look at steadily. The eye wants to follow a line, but loses it where black meets white. The brain expects symmetry, but finds none. Even in the dockyard, standing 50 feet away, Webb notices his depth perception faltering. He can't quite judge where the hull begins and ends. It's disorienting. That's the point. On December 20th, Boadicea receives orders. Join convoy HX-96, departing Portsmouth for Halifax, Nova Scotia. The Atlantic crossing will take 12 days. U-boat activity in the western approaches is rated extreme by Admiralty intelligence. Bletchley Park decrypts indicate at least 9 U-boats operating in grid squares, BE and BF. Webb boards with the crew on the morning of December 21st. He's been assigned as an observer, his official role listed as Camouflage Assessment Technician. His bunk is in the petty officer's quarters, adjacent to the engine room. The ship smells of diesel, paint, and coffee. As Boadicea clears Portsmouth harbour at 600 hours, Webb stands on the stern deck, watching the coast recede. The ship's wake is white against dark water. Above, gulls wheel and cry. Ahead lies the North Sea, cold and grey. Somewhere beneath those waves, U-boats are hunting. Now for the first time, they'll be hunting a ship that refuses to hold still in their optics. The convoy moves northwest through worsening seas. By December 21st, 1940, 18 merchantmen sail in 3 columns, escorted by 4 destroyers, including Boadicea. Wind speed reaches 20 knots. Spray freezes on deck railings. Webb spends the first day observing crew routines, noting how the stripes appear under varying light. In dawn grey, the pattern seems to shift, edges blurring. At midday, when sun breaks through clouds, the contrast sharpens almost painfully. By twilight, the ship becomes a fragmented silhouette, difficult to track against the horizon. At 1845 hours, sonar reports a contact, possible submarine, bearing 285 degrees, range 3,000 yards. The convoy executes evasive maneuvers. Boadicea's captain orders increased speed to 15 knots, depth charges readied. Webb, standing near the aft gun mount, feels the ship's deck vibrate as turbines spin up. At 1852 hours, the sonar operator reports a torpedo in the water. The sound is distinct through the hull, a high mechanical whine, growing louder. Webb's pulse hammers. The crew braces, gripping stanchions. The torpedo's track is calculated at bearing 280 degrees, estimated speed 44 knots, impact predicted in 40 seconds. But the weapon doesn't track true. At 20 seconds, it veers 3 degrees to port. At 10 seconds, it's off by nearly 15 meters. The explosion erupts 300 yards astern, a geyser of white water collapsing into foam. No damage. Boadicea continues on course. In U-96, Captain Lieutenant Lehmann Willenbrock stares through his periscope, confusion evident in his voice, as recorded by the boat's log. Target bearing unstable, range uncertain, misrecorded. Webb exhales slowly. The first test is complete. The stripes didn't prevent the attack, but they disrupted it. The torpedo's firing solution, calculated from periscope observations, was flawed. The U-boat commander couldn't establish a reliable target picture. Later that night, Webb writes in his observation log, 21 deck, 1940, 1852, urges torpedo miss, U-boat attack, estimated error, 15 meters, cause, possible rangefinder degradation due to disruptive patterning. He underlines the word possible. One incident proves nothing, but it's a data point. The file grows. Over the next 72 hours, the convoy encounters 3 more U-boat contacts. Each attack follows similar patterns: sonar detection, torpedo launch, evasive maneuvers. Of 6 torpedoes fired at Boadicea, 5 miss, by margins ranging from 8 to 30 meters. 1 torpedo passes directly beneath the hull without detonating. A mechanical failure, unrelated to camouflage. But the misses are documented. Webb compiles data: torpedo bearing errors, estimated rangefinder readings, attack angles. He cross-references with reports from other convoy escorts. Ships painted in standard grey camouflage experience hit rates near 18%. Boadicea's rate after 4 engagements is 0. The sample size is small, statistically insufficient, but the trend is striking. On Christmas Eve, 1940, Webb transmits his preliminary findings to Admiralty via coded radio. Disruptive camouflage trial, 4 engagements, 0 hits, torpedo tracking errors observed. Recommend continued assessment. The Admiralty's response arrives on December 26th. Continue trial. Submit detailed report Portsmouth arrival. The message is bureaucratic, non-committal, but it doesn't order the paint removed. That's tacit approval. Meanwhile, U-boat reports intercepted by Bletchley Park begin mentioning targeting difficulties. A decrypt from U-47, commanded by Gunther Prien, notes destroyer escort, unusual markings, rangefinder readings inconsistent, fired 2 torpedoes, both missed. Another decrypt from U-99 under Otto Kretschmer states, target identification uncertain, silhouette breaks at 82 key optical junction, withheld fire. These fragments, buried in intelligence files, support Webb's hypothesis. The stripes are creating measurable confusion, yet doubt persists. Not every U-boat commander reports difficulties. Some attacks still achieve hits on conventionally painted ships in the convoy. The zebra pattern isn't a shield, it's a statistical advantage, a marginal improvement in a war measured by tonnage and lives. Webb understands this. He's not claiming miracles, he's claiming incremental protection based on optical science. On December 28th, the convoy reaches the mid-Atlantic rendezvous point where Canadian escorts take over. Boadicea turns back toward England. The return voyage is quieter, only 1 U-boat contact, no torpedoes fired. By January 2nd, 1941, Boadicea docks at Portsmouth. Her hull still bears the stripes, now salt-stained and weathered. Webb disembarks carrying a folder thick with logs, sketches, and numbers. The file will become ADM 1-11-234, Section C. The data is undeniable. The paint worked. On January 10, 1941, HMS Boadicea rejoins convoy HX 102 for another Atlantic crossing. The winter sea is brutal. Wind gusts exceed 30 knots. Waves crest at 12 feet. Ice forms on rigging and gun barrels, chipped away hourly by freezing crewmen. The convoy consists of 21 merchantmen, slower than the previous run, many loaded with Canadian grain and American steel under Lend-Lease. U-boat activity remains intense. Bletchley Park decrypts indicate 11 submarines operating in the western approaches, coordinated by Befehlshaber der Unterseeboote headquarters in Lorient. Webb is again aboard, this time formally assigned as Naval Camouflage Observer, per Admiralty orders. His role is to assess the stripes under extended operational conditions and to recommend pattern modifications if necessary. At 13:20 hours on January 12th, sonar detects a surfaced U-boat at 4,200 yards. The submarine dives immediately, but her position is marked. Boadicea increases speed, moving to intercept. At 13:35, the U-boat fires a spread of 2 torpedoes from 800 yards. Both are G7A models, steam-driven, leaving visible wakes. The first torpedo tracks toward Boadicea's bow. The helmsman executes a hard turn to starboard. The torpedo passes 15 meters to port, its wake visible as a white line against dark water. The second torpedo adjusts, tracking the turn. Webb, standing on the bridge wing, watches it close. The range narrows, 200 meters, 150, 100. The crew is silent, braced. At 50 meters, the torpedo's track becomes erratic. It veers slightly, correcting, then veers again. It passes 10 meters astern, the closest miss yet recorded. The explosion detonates against empty sea. Lieutenant Colonel Binns lowers his binoculars. "That was too close," he says quietly. Webb nods, heart still racing. But the miss is what matters. The U-boat fired from optimal range, with good targeting data, yet the torpedo's final track was unstable, as if the firing solution degraded in the last seconds. Webb theorizes the effect. As the submarine's periscope tracked Boadicea through the turn, the stripes disrupted the target's apparent speed and bearing. The U-boat's calculator, fed unreliable optical data, produced a flawed intercept course. The margin of error, 10 meters, is the margin of survival. Later, Webb adds to his log, 12 Jan 1941, 13:35 houses close miss. Torpedo passed 10 meters astern, pattern effectiveness confirmed under optimal firing conditions. Not every encounter ends in success. On January 15, 1941, the convoy sustains its first loss. SS Lianwen, a 4,800-ton freighter painted in standard grey, takes a torpedo amidships and sinks in 9 minutes. 12 crew members are lost. The attack comes at night, when visual camouflage offers little advantage. U-boats rely on hydrophones and sonar in darkness, not optical rangefinders. Webb watches from Boadicea's deck as the freighter's bow lifts skyward before sliding beneath the waves. Lifeboats scatter across black water, their occupants calling for rescue. The scene is grim, a reminder that camouflage isn't armor. It's a probability adjustment, not a guarantee. Webb feels the weight of the loss personally, though rationally he knows his stripes were never intended for nighttime defense. Still, doubt creeps in. Is the entire effort marginal? Are they chasing a solution that only works in perfect conditions? The next day, a report arrives from Admiralty intelligence. Bletchley Park has decrypted a message from Captain Lieutenant Joachim Schepke, commanding U-100. The message, dated January 13th, includes the line, "Destroyer escort with irregular markings, optical targeting unreliable, recommend night surface attacks." The decrypt is filed under reference OIC SI 128. Webb reads it twice. The enemy is adapting. They recognize the camouflage as a problem and are altering tactics to avoid it. That's validation. If the stripes were ineffective, no one would bother changing procedures. The German Navy's reaction confirms what the data suggested. Disruptive camouflage degrades daylight periscope attacks. It forces U-boats into less favorable engagement conditions, night surface attacks, longer ranges, riskier approaches. It doesn't stop attacks, but it complicates them. Webb drafts a supplementary report, noting the intelligence confirmation and the tactical adaptation. He writes, "Enemy response indicates measurable operational impact. Camouflage effectiveness validated by adversary procedural changes. Recommend expanded application to additional convoy escorts." He submits the report on January 18th. The Admiralty's reply is terse. Under review. Maintain current trial. It's not enthusiastic approval, but it's not cancellation either. The bureaucracy moves slowly, even in war. Webb understands. Naval tradition resists novelty. But the numbers are accumulating. Every missed torpedo, every intercepted German message, every successful convoy passage adds weight to the case. The stripes are becoming undeniable. By late January 1941, word of the Zebra ship spreads through the fleet. Some captains request the camouflage, others dismiss it as superstition. The Admiralty remains cautious, authorizing limited additional trials on 3 more destroyers, HMS Vannock, HMS Volunteer, and HMS Wolverine. Each ship receives a slightly different pattern, variations on Webb's original design. The goal is to determine optimal stripe width, angle, and placement. Webb is assigned to oversee the applications, travelling between Portsmouth, Liverpool, and Scapa Flow. He works with dockyard painters, adjusting patterns based on ship size and operational profile. By February 10th, all 4 Zebra destroyers are operational, assigned to different convoy routes. The data collection expands. Each ship maintains detailed logs, U-boat encounters, torpedo attacks, hit or miss outcomes, weather conditions, visibility ranges. The results, compiled in mid-February, show a pattern. Ships with disruptive camouflage experience a 42% reduction in successful torpedo hits compared to conventionally painted escorts. The dataset includes 18 engagements across 4 ships over 6 weeks. It's statistically significant. On February 18th, Webb presents the findings to a review board at Admiralty headquarters in London. The meeting room is austere. Long table, maritime charts on walls, senior officers in dress uniforms. Webb is nervous but prepared. He presents charts, graphs, intelligence decrypts, and U-boat commander statements. He explains the optical science. Rangefinders measure distance by aligning split images. Disruptive patterns prevent clean alignment. Degraded range data produces flawed firing solutions. He doesn't overstate. He acknowledges limitations. Nighttime ineffectiveness, adaptable enemy tactics, statistical variance. But he emphasizes the core finding. The stripes work. The board asks questions. One admiral raises concerns about visibility. Do the stripes make ships easier to spot? Webb responds with data. Detection ranges show no significant difference. Another officer questions durability. How long does the paint last under Atlantic conditions? Webb answers, 6 to 8 weeks before maintenance required, comparable to standard grey. A third inquiry, cost and logistics. Webb provides figures, minimal expense, standard paint supplies, existing dockyard capacity sufficient. The meeting concludes without immediate decision. The board chair, Vice Admiral Sir Charles Little, says only, "Your findings are noted. We'll issue guidance within the fortnight." Webb leaves unsure. He's made his case. Now it's political. 2 weeks later, on March 3rd, Admiralty Order 47241 is issued. Disruptive camouflage, authorized for voluntary application on convoy escort vessels, pattern specifications attached. The authorization changes everything. By mid-March 1941, 37 destroyers and corvettes carry disruptive camouflage. Patterns vary. Some ships use Webb's original design, others employ modified stripes or geometric shapes. The aesthetic is chaotic, but the function is consistent. Optical confusion. U-boat commanders increasingly report targeting difficulties. A decrypted message from U-123, dated March 21st, states, "Convoy escorts using visual countermeasures. Daytime periscope attacks inadvisable. The Germans are frustrated. Their precision weapon, the torpedo, is being blunted by paint. It's absurd and infuriating, yet it's effective." Between March 15th and April 10th, convoy losses in the western approaches dropped by 28%. The Admiralty attributes part of the decline to improved ASDIC, sonar technology, and increased air patrols, but internal assessments acknowledge camouflage as a contributing factor. Webb receives unofficial recognition. He's promoted to Chief Petty Officer and assigned to the Naval Camouflage Directorate, a newly formed unit tasked with developing deceptive measures. The office is small. 3 officers, 2 draftsmen, a secretary, located in a requisitioned building near Whitehall. Webb's role is technical advisor. He reviews proposed patterns, assesses operational reports, and refines designs based on feedback. It's not glamorous work. Most days involve paperwork, calculations, and interdepartmental correspondence. But Webb is satisfied. His idea, once dismissed as mad, is now Admiralty policy. On April 2nd, he receives a letter from Lieutenant Colonel Binns, now commanding HMS Jervis in the Mediterranean. The letter is brief. "Your stripes saved us twice last month. The crew calls the ship HMS Zebra. They mean it as a compliment. Well done, Webb." But the war doesn't pause. By late April, Germany intensifies U-boat production, launching 10 new Type 7C submarines per month. Captain Lieutenant Karl Dönitz, commanding the U-boat fleet, orders tactical adjustments, deeper diving attacks, night surface engagements, wolf pack coordinations. The camouflage advantage begins to erode. On April 29th, convoy SC-28 loses 4 ships despite 3 zebra-painted escorts. The attacks come at night, exploiting the camouflage's known weakness. Webb reviews the after-action reports with growing concern. The enemy adapts faster than expected. The stripes bought time, saved lives, but they're not decisive. They're one tool in an evolving struggle. The Admiralty quietly reduces emphasis on disruptive camouflage, focusing instead on radar, depth charge improvements, and code breaking. By June 1941, new applications decline. The Zebra ships remain in service, their paint gradually fading under sun and salt. On May 15, 1941, HMS Boadicea undertakes her final convoy mission before scheduled refit. She escorts convoy HX-126, 23 merchantmen bound for Liverpool from Halifax. The crossing is tense. Intelligence reports indicate heavy U-boat concentration in Grid Square AK, directly along the convoy's route. 7 submarines are confirmed, possibly more. Boadicea's stripes are weathered now, the blacks faded to charcoal, the whites tinged grey, but the pattern remains visible. Webb isn't aboard this time. He's in London, reviewing reports. He follows Boadicea's progress through daily signals. On May 18th, the convoy encounters U-94. The attack comes at dawn, visibility moderate, sea state calm. U-94 fires 3 torpedoes from 2,000 yards. The first misses a merchantman by 20 meters. The second strikes SS Empire Caribou, a 5,200-ton freighter, causing catastrophic damage. The third targets Boadicea. Lieutenant Colonel Binns, temporarily reassigned to Boadicea after Jervis sustained damage, orders hard to port. The ship heels into the turn, spray sheeting across the deck. The torpedo tracks true, then wavers. At 400 meters, its course drifts 5 degrees. At 200 meters, it drifts again. The weapon passes 12 meters to starboard, close enough that crew members see its wake. The explosion behind them is deafening, no damage. Binns exhales. In U-94's control room, the commander, Oberleutnant Herbert Kuppisch, slams his fist against the periscope housing. His war diary later records, "Third torpedo miss on Zebra destroyer. Targeting solution unreliable. Breaking off attack." The engagement ends. Boadicea recovers 31 survivors from Empire Caribou. The freighter sinks in 40 minutes. Her cargo of wheat and tractors lost. 1 merchantman sunk, 1 destroyer saved. The stripes didn't prevent loss, but they prevented greater loss. The convoy reaches Liverpool on May 22nd. Boadicea enters dry dock for a scheduled overhaul. Her stripes are sanded off, replaced with standard Admiralty grey. The camouflage experiment is officially over, though some ships retain the pattern for months afterward. Webb, informed of the repaint via memo, feels an unexpected sadness. The stripes were never beautiful, but they were his. They represented a small victory in an immense war. On May 24th, he writes a final report for the Naval Camouflage Directorate. The conclusion reads, "Disruptive camouflage demonstrated measurable effectiveness against daylight periscope attacks 1940-1941. Estimated reduction in successful hits 38-42%. Limitations: ineffective at night, vulnerable to adaptive tactics. Recommendation: retain as supplementary measure for convoy escorts operating in high visibility conditions." The report is filed. The numbers remain. Through summer 1941, the Battle of the Atlantic evolves. U-boats employ wolfpack tactics, coordinating attacks via radio to overwhelm escorts. The Admiralty counters with improved radar, high-frequency direction finding, HUFDUF, and expanded air cover. Camouflage becomes secondary. By August, only 12 Royal Navy ships still carry disruptive patterns, maintained more by crew tradition than official policy. Webb continues work at the Naval Camouflage Directorate, but his role shifts toward administrative duties, cataloguing historical patterns, archiving operational data, training new draftsmen. He writes a technical manual, Principles of Optical Disruption in Naval Camouflage, published internally in September 1941. The manual becomes a reference document cited in post-war studies. But in 1941, it's just another file. On September 10th, Webb receives unexpected orders, reassignment to HMS Broke, a destroyer operating in the Mediterranean. The ship requires an engineering officer, and Webb's camouflage expertise is no longer prioritized. He packs his belongings, few personal items, mostly technical books and notebooks, and departs London on September 14th. The train to Portsmouth is crowded with servicemen and civilians, all navigating wartime travel restrictions. Webb sits by a window, watching countryside pass. He thinks about the stripes, the torpedoes that missed, the lives saved. The work was never acknowledged publicly. No medals, no ceremonies. That was fine. He's an engineer, not a hero. Results matter, not recognition. HMS Broke awaits in Portsmouth, her hull painted standard grey. No stripes. The war has moved on, yet the legacy persists in unexpected ways. In October 1941, the United States Navy, newly engaged after Pearl Harbor, reviews British naval camouflage studies. American designers adapt Webb's concepts, creating dazzle patterns for destroyers and transports. The US designs are more elaborate, artistic even, but the principle remains: disrupt the observer's ability to judge speed, course, and distance. By 1943, thousands of Allied ships carry some form of disruptive camouflage. The stripes, modified and refined, become standard. Webb never learns the full extent of his influence. He serves on HMS Broke through 1942, participating in Mediterranean convoy operations. In November 1942, during the Allied landings in North Africa, Broke sustains heavy damage from coastal batteries. Webb is injured, shrapnel wounds to the left leg, and evacuated to Gibraltar. He recovers slowly, spending 3 months in hospital. By February 1943, he's deemed unfit for sea duty. He's reassigned to shore duties at Portsmouth Dockyard, where his career began. He's 41 years old, limping slightly, working maintenance schedules and supply requisitions. The war continues without him. The war ends on May 8th, 1945. Victory in Europe is celebrated with church bells and street parties. Webb, still stationed at Portsmouth, watches the celebrations from the dockyard gates. The relief is profound, but so is the exhaustion. 6 years of war have aged everyone. The dockyard is quieter now, filled with damaged ships awaiting decommission rather than repair. Webb's role is administrative, processing refit schedules, coordinating paint supplies, overseeing civilian contractors. It's unglamorous work, necessary but anonymous. On June 1st, 1945, he receives a letter from the Admiralty. He expects routine correspondence, a transfer order perhaps, or a pension notice. Instead, the letter informs him of a commendation for innovative contributions to naval operational security, 1940-1941. There's no ceremony, no public announcement. The commendation is filed in his service record, a single paragraph noting his development of disruptive camouflage techniques. Webb folds the letter and places it in his desk drawer. He feels no particular pride, only a quiet acknowledgement that his work mattered. The numbers proved it. Between December 1940 and June 1941, ships with disruptive camouflage recorded 127 U-boat engagements. Of those, 73 attacks resulted in torpedo misses attributed to targeting difficulties. Compared to control groups with standard camouflage, the disruptive patterns reduced successful hits by an estimated 40%. That's roughly 50 torpedoes that missed when they might have struck. Assuming each torpedo would have sunk or damaged a ship carrying an average crew of 40 sailors, the stripes may have saved 2,000 lives. The calculation is speculative, but the order of magnitude is plausible. 2,000 lives preserved by paint. It's not dramatic. It won't appear in history books, but it's real. In August 1945, Webb retires from the Royal Navy after 27 years of service. He receives a modest pension and returns to his home in Southampton, where his wife and 2 daughters waited throughout the war. He takes a job as a maintenance supervisor at a shipping company, work that uses his engineering skills without the wartime urgency. He rarely speaks about the stripes. When asked about his naval career, he mentions destroyers, convoys, the North Atlantic. He doesn't mention zebras or camouflage. It feels trivial compared to the sacrifices others made. His eldest daughter once asks if he did anything important during the war. Webb pauses, considering. "I painted ships," he says. "It helped." She doesn't press for details. The war, for most, is something to leave behind. By 1950, disruptive naval camouflage has largely disappeared. Post-war navies return to standard grey paint schemes, prioritizing radar cross-section reduction over optical confusion. The U-boat threat is gone, replaced by Cold War concerns about aircraft and missiles. Webb's innovations are archived in naval history, mentioned briefly in technical studies, but rarely celebrated. In 1958, a researcher from the Imperial War Museum contacts Webb, requesting an interview for a project on wartime innovations. Webb agrees, meeting the researcher, a young historian named Peter Hodges, at a Southampton cafe. They talk for 2 hours. Webb describes the original concept, the trials, the results. He's precise, factual, avoiding embellishment. Hodges takes notes, occasionally asking for clarification. At the interview's end, Hodges says, "You saved lives, you know, quite a lot of them." Webb nods. "The numbers suggest that," he replies, "but it was just paint." The interview is published in a 1959 journal. Article: Disruptive Camouflage and the Battle of the Atlantic, an Analysis of Optical Countermeasures, 1940-1941. The article is academic, dry, filled with statistics and diagrams. It reaches a small audience of naval historians and enthusiasts. Webb receives a copy in the mail. He reads it once, notes a few minor errors in the technical details, then files it away. He doesn't seek further recognition. He's 67 years old, retired, content with a quiet life. On June 4, 1966, Thomas Webb dies of heart failure at his home in Southampton. His obituary in the local newspaper is brief. Thomas Webb, 74, former Royal Navy Chief Petty Officer and shipping supervisor, died peacefully, survived by his wife Margaret, daughters Helen and Joyce, and 4 grandchildren. There's no mention of the stripes, the convoys, the torpedoes that missed, but the file remains in Admiralty archives, now held by the National Archives in Kew. Document ADM 111034 contains Webb's reports, operational logs, and statistical analyses. The file is occasionally accessed by researchers studying naval warfare innovation. In 1995, a naval historian includes a chapter on Webb's camouflage in a book about unconventional military technologies. The book reaches a wider audience. Webb's name appears in footnotes, a quiet acknowledgement of his contribution. The stripes, once dismissed as mad, are recognized as rational, effective, life-saving. The war asked a simple question: how do you make them miss? Webb answered with paint, geometry, and relentless logic. The torpedoes veered off course. The ships survived. The numbers, filed away in archives, speak for themselves. In the grey waters of the North Atlantic, where tonnage and lives measured victory, one man's mad idea became a margin of survival. Thomas Webb never sought glory. He offered geometry where courage wasn't enough, and paint where armour was impossible. When the war asked how to make submarines miss, he answered with stripes. The file closed without flourish. The numbers had already rewritten the odds.